Hello, welcome to InfoFire, the fireside chat series from Information Matters. InfoFire brings visionaries and experts from diverse domains to share their stories and perspectives on a chosen topic. Each episode is a conversation between our guest and your host. I am Shalini Aras, your host for this series. I am an academic with more than 4 decades of experience in teaching and researching information. I founded 2 educational institutions, the International School of Information Management at the University of Mysore with a seed grant from the Ford Foundation, the first iSchool in India, and the Myra School of Business with a focus on triple bottom line. In today's episode, I am in conversation with Dr. Gururaj Deshpande, popularly known as Deshpande, founder, president, and chairman, Sparta Group, an investment company. The topic of our conversation is entrepreneurship, innovation, and social change. Let me take a couple of minutes to introduce our guest, Deshpande. Dr. Deshpande is a prominent Indian American entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and philanthropist, widely recognized for his contributions to the fields of technology, business innovation, and social entrepreneurship. He epitomizes the philosophy of creating wealth not just for himself but to spread it widely, fostering innovation and building a better world for all. He is best known for the Massachusetts, USA based internet equipment manufacturer Sycamore Networks, the Deshpande Foundation, and the Deshpande Center for Technological Innovation at MIT. Born in Hubli, Karnataka, India, Deshpande obtained a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, India, and a master's degree from the University of New Brunswick, Canada, and a PhD in data communication from the Queen's University, Canada. Dr. Deshpande is a serial entrepreneur and has co-founded and led several successful technology companies. He began his entrepreneurial journey with Coral Networks, a router developer that he co-founded in the year 1988. Some of the better-known companies co-founded by Deshpande include Cascade Communications, a pioneer in high-speed internet networking, founded in 1990 and acquired by Ascent Communications in 1997. Sycamore Networks, founded in 1998, which focused on intelligent optical networking and went public in the year 1999, becoming one of the most successful IPOs of the era. Tejas Networks, a leading provider of optical and data networking products in India. He holds board and advisor roles in many companies, including chairman of the board of directors at A123 Systems and chairman of the board of directors at Web Dialogues. Dr. Deshpande is not only an entrepreneur but an investor and venture capitalist too, with a commendable track record of fostering innovation and supporting startups globally. Sparta Group LLC is the investment office of Dr. Deshpande. Dr. Deshpande is deeply committed to addressing social challenges through innovative, scalable solutions. He co-founded with his wife Jayashree Deshpande the Deshpande Foundation in 1995 to support education, entrepreneurship, and sustainable development projects in India, Canada, and the US. He established the Deshpande Center for Technological Innovation at MIT with a grant of $20 million in the year 2006. The center fosters research and innovation to bridge the gap between academic discoveries and marketable technologies. A few more examples of Deshpande's philanthropic endeavors include the Pond Deshpande Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, PDC, at the University of New Brunswick, the Dun Deshpande Queen's Innovation Center at Queen's University. The Deshpande Foundation has founded various social impact initiatives, including Entrepreneurship for All, the Hubli Sandbox in Hubli, India, the Deshpande Center for Social Entrepreneurship in Hubli, the Gopalakrishnan Deshpande Center at IIT Madras, And he has also initiated many series such as the Startup Dialogue and the Deshpande Symposium series and many such initiatives. Dr. Deshpande has received many awards and recognition for his commendable work. He was appointed by President Barack Obama to the co-chairmanship of the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship in the year 2010. He was ranked number 21 in the Boston Globe Tech Power Players 50 in the year 2022. He also got the Forbes India Philanthropy Award in 2014. He was named the IEEE Ernst Weber Managerial Leadership Award 2013. He has written a book titled On Entrepreneurship and Impact, which was published in 2030. Without further ado, let us meet and listen to Dr. Deshpande, a remarkably simple man with a big heart devoted to transforming lives through innovation and generosity. Good morning, sir. Namaste.
Namaste, namaste.
Welcome to InfoFire, the Fireside Chat series from Information Matters. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this conversation with me. It's a pleasure and, of course, a privilege to have this conversation with an iconic figure such as you, Dr. Deshpande.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shalini.
So the conversation that we are going to have today, as I said, suggested to you, is going to be on technology, innovation, and social change, the areas that you have been very closely associated with. So let us begin with the basics, as we say, go back to the basics about what's entrepreneurship and the definition of entrepreneurship. As you know, it's a wide spectrum from a simple definition such as starting a business to more nuanced or more complex ones such as starting something innovative, something unique, and going back to I mean, if I ever to quote one of my favorite authors, Joseph Schumber, he says that entrepreneurs are the ones who are actually catalyzing this change in the world, in the economic world, etc. And according to him, he introduces the concept of creative destruction, as you might be knowing. So my question to you is that creative destruction, uniqueness, these are the two things that go with entrepreneurship. So in your own personal experience of, having been an entrepreneur, what do you think is that, how could you say that this is unique, this is creative destruction in the enterprises or in the ventures that you have started?
Okay. So an entrepreneur, always starts with some insight, some passion for bringing about a change. So it all starts with, the world is A today, and you look at it and you say, it doesn't have to be A, it can be B, and B being better than A. And that motivates the entrepreneur to get to B. He may not exactly know how to get there, but he is so committed to that getting to B that he'll get there. And when you get to B, and if B is truly better than A, then A gets destroyed in some ways. So the creative change comes about because of making this a better world in whatever way that you think is a better world. And not every attempt works. A lot of them fail. But if you do get there, then when you have something better, then the previous thing goes away. And that's the creativity and the destruction that happens in the world. This always has happened in the world, but it used to happen at a certain pace. Maybe once in 100 years, maybe once in 50 years, and so on. But over the last probably 50 years or so, it's become a part of the economy. And so the whole system is set up so that people can keep coming up with better ideas and building institutions around it, whether it's social change or economic change. And so that has really accelerated the pace at which the world is changing. And so as the world changes faster and faster, entrepreneurship plays a central role in the economics of the country.
So according to you, then, it's very closely tied to creative destruction and innovation, etc., right? So my next question to you is, today, of course, when we are talking about, say, 2024 or even 2020s, let me say, entrepreneurship has become the buzz. Everybody is talking about it, talk of the town. And of course, it's also the cool thing for every youngster to talk about, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to do this. I think probably if you ask any college kid, he or she would say, well, I would like to do this, my own venture. But I'm sure, even though it was not very new or very unusual during your time, let's say 40 years back when you started this entrepreneur journey, it was not with that kind of a swagger. You would have said, well, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to do this, right? So my question to you is, in the last 40 years or 50 years that you have seen, what has changed for an entrepreneur or in the field of entrepreneurship itself?
Yeah. So, if you look at the early 1900s and late 1800s, there was Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie, a few people who brought about a dramatic change. When I was starting the first company in 80s, it was common, but not that common. In all of Massachusetts, probably there were 7 or 8 entrepreneurs who would build companies. So it wasn't that common. But over the last 40 years or so, it's become such an integral part of the society and the economics that is everywhere. So anybody with a semi-decent idea that actually makes sense is more likely to be successful. So what has changed? I would say 3 things. Number one, access to capital. Number two, willingness of the customers to accept new things. And the third thing is other entrepreneurs and incubators. So the first part of it, people have figured out how they can invest in these ideas that people come up with. Not every one of them needs to be successful, but if a few of them are successful, then you can make a lot more money than the money that you invested. So venture capital has become a very good financial vehicle for people to invest, and more money is going to venture capital, and the venture capitalists are always looking for good entrepreneurs to fund. So access to capital has become pretty formalized now. You have angel investors, venture capitalists, and then Wall Street and Dalal Street and so on. So access to capital is there. The customers, the customers obviously, when they come across something that's new, it's very risky for them to accept it. And so the old style where things were changing slowly, taking that risk was pretty damaging, just even for their careers, because if they took it and if it didn't work, they lost all their positions in the companies and so on. Whereas now, there is so much change that's going on that people have to be constantly looking for that new ideas, because it's embracing those new ideas and being first in the market that gives you the competitive advantage. So in some ways, if you do come up with a new idea that makes sense, you do have people who are ready to accept it. And then the third part is the peers and the incubators. It's whenever you're trying to come up with a new idea, you never know whether it's going to work or not work. So the good way to get to the final solution is to fail fast and fail small. That is, you want to be trying things, and then if something doesn't work, then you pivot, you do something else. That, if there's only one entrepreneur in an island somewhere, it'll take a long time for him to get to that final solution, because it may take 2 3 years to try the idea out and then know whether it works or doesn't work and so on. Whereas when you form these hubs, whether it's Bangalore or Silicon Valley or Boston or whatever, you have so many entrepreneurs that they all talk to each other. And so they can iterate their ideas a lot faster. So they don't really have to go through the whole process of implementing something before they know whether something is going to work or not work. And the incubators are so commonplace everywhere, and they're the ones who actually help you work through your ideas. So the faster iteration to get to a good solution, access to capital, and a market that's ready to embrace innovation are three things that have changed dramatically over the last 40 years.
Excellent. I understand, of course, the three things, key factors, in fact, that have created what is generally called the ecosystem for entrepreneurship today. I mean, venture capital itself is fairly new in other parts of the world. I mean, of course, it started in the US, but coming to India or any other country, we know that even here, of course, you might be knowing Bangalore is called the startup capital and all of that stuff, mainly because of the fact that there are VCs to fund them. Well, I agree with you on that. I have my next question is about, well, I agree that the ecosystem has been created because of these three factors. But I think, in my view, at least particularly in technology, government plays a very important role in creating, or at least in triggering and spurring some of these things. I mean, if I could take just one example, internet itself, right? So internet itself has been primarily because of the US federal government starting that, funding it, etc. Of course, Vice President Al Gore then pushed it. So you need the government policies and pushes, or at least nudges, to help create this environment of, say, entrepreneurship and innovation, etc. And you yourself have been nominated by, I mean, you worked as Barack Obama's former chairmanship of National Advisory Council for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So I want your insights based on that experience of what's the role of government in creating this ecosystem, particularly for entrepreneurship and innovation.
Yeah. So the role of the government is to create an environment so that more and more entrepreneurs have an opportunity to build businesses and reduce the friction for them so that they can be successful. Because the more successful they are, the more employment they create, the more economic activity they create. So, just like we talked about, you need access to capital. So, they need to come up with ways so that the access to capital becomes easier. In fact, in the early stages, the governments were very involved, and in India, they're still involved in subsidizing the venture capital funds. So they would say, well, if you raise $100 million, I'll give you another $50 million at a very low interest rate so that you can give it back to me when you realize your gains. So that it makes it easier for other investors to come in because their capital is now protected. So access to capital, government can come up with policies in terms of taxing and facilitating the capital for the entrepreneurs. They can facilitate incubators. And then they are also a big market, so they can also embrace the market. But more than these three, what really creates the opportunity for business is something has to change in the world. Mm-hmm. And so, because if nothing has changed, there is nothing new you can think of that can make it a better world. Sometimes it's a business process, but most of the time it's driven by technology. And technology, makes something possible that wasn't possible before. It's like, for example, 20 years ago, if I and you wanted to do a video conferencing, it was almost impossible. A company had to invest like $20 million just to be able to do something like this. Now everybody can. And so this has been possible because of technology. And the technology innovation does not happen by itself. It's primarily driven by research and development of the government US taxpayer funding. So, and that was my motivation. By year 2000, I'd done many companies, and we set up a foundation in 1995. And then I and my wife Deshri, we were thinking, how do we create more opportunities for entrepreneurs like ourselves? And a lot of the companies that we started in 70s, 80s, 90s actually came out of Bell Labs and IBM Labs and so on, because at that point, a lot of these big companies had monopolies and they could actually fund these research labs, which were very altruistic. I mean, there were Nobel laureates who would come up with new ideas, but the ideas were not captive to those organizations. They were available to anybody. And so entrepreneurs like ourselves, we took those ideas and then came up with these new companies. By year 2000, because the monopolies were all gone and it was global competition, all these labs disappeared. But at the same time, the US taxpayers were spending about $50 billion a year funding research in universities. And so I joined the board of MIT 25 years ago, and we set up this Deshpande Center for Technological Innovation. The idea behind the center being very simple, it is instead of an innovator innovating the whole thing and then getting patents and then go looking for opportunities, if the innovator is motivated by impact, connect them to the marketplace, connect them to the problem as they're innovating, so that when they finish their innovation, it's more likely to have a pull in the marketplace. And therefore, it leads to a startup or licensing to a bigger company and so on. Fortunately, that simple idea turned out to be very powerful. And anything that went through the center at MIT was 3 times more likely to have an impact than otherwise. And so when I was co-chairing a council for President Obama, I also worked with the National Science Foundation to roll out this same process nationwide in US. And the program is called ICORE. And that's been a very impactful program, so that not only are people coming up with new ideas, but they're coming up with new ideas that are solving some burning problems in the world. Because only when you solve some real problem that people have, that you create an opportunity. And India now is actually spending a lot of money, close to 100,000 crores on research and development. And I felt that India also needed ICORE equivalent. So about 6 years ago, we started a program in IIT Madras. It's called Gopal Krishna Deshpande Center, and it's replicating ICORE. Started 6 years ago, and I'm very pleased that it's working equally well. And just like the US government agency has embraced the whole program and taken over, I'm hoping that the Indian government will also take over this program and spread it across the country.
So it's this nexus or the close relationship, between people like you are entrepreneurs or investors and the government, and of course the academics that fuel this innovation or even any other processes, as you are saying. You have often talked about your famous formula, innovation plus relevance is equal to impact. Well, I totally concur that it has to be relevant. The question that I have in my mind is relevance being, very subjective, very individualistic to the community and to the context and to the time situated. So how isn't it a challenge to establish this relevance when you start a particular, let's say, an entrepreneur journey? Because supposing, if you're sitting in India, you think of that as, of course, you can do it for that particular community, but I'm not talking about doing something for the community. I'm talking about technological solutions also. Usually when we think of technology, we think of, it should be for everybody. I mean, even though not directly connected to this, let me also give this my own personally, not today, but I'm talking about 30, 40 years back, whenever I'm giving a talk and then I wear this, microphone with the device, I said it's designed by a man. Because, in India, you're wearing a sari, you can't hold it. You don't have a pocket to put that thing on, right? So I would normally hold it in my hand, the left-hand side, and speak. The point I'm saying is, what is relevance? Relevance can be only felt by the person or the community, etc. So relevance is a challenge to establish. So that's why I go back to your formula about the challenges of identifying or, finding that relevance.
So, for innovation, you need a lot of smart people working on it. So you need universities, you need think tanks, and so on, to come up with ideas, because you cannot mandate innovation. Innovation is something
Yeah.
where you have to give full freedom to the community to come up with new ideas. But at the same time, even though all these people, they're very genuine and have a desire to create a big impact on the world, they get more into impressing each other. It becomes like a club. And that club moves further and further away from the real world. And so they come up with all these fantastic ideas, but the ideas don't necessarily mean anything for anybody. So if you want to have a creative community to have an impact on the world, you have to have a conscious effort to connect them to the real problem. And that's the innovation plus relevance is equal to impact. Now, relevance sometimes is relevant to a small community, sometimes it's relevant to the whole country, sometimes it's relevant to the whole world. When something is relevant to the whole world, usually that particular idea, it creates a whole industry. For example, let's say cell phones. When it started, it was relevant to maybe 1,000 people, and then a million people, and then a billion people, and now everybody. So it creates a whole industry, and within that industry, there is a lot of innovations that come around it. It's an industry. You get thousands of companies building that industry, and so on. Maybe one or two companies may dominate it, but even then, there is a lot of stuff going on. Sometimes the relevance is very specific to a region, to a village, to a taluka, in which case you get a small business going. So it's an ecosystem where it creates an opportunity for everybody to look at problems and solve them. Sometimes you have micro entrepreneurs solving very small problems. Sometimes you have medium MSMEs who solve slightly bigger problems. And sometimes you have these global companies which can take on problems that become relevant to everybody in the world. So it's a question of the vision of the entrepreneur to think about a change that can impact life to more and more people.
So that, we have been talking, you have already mentioned about your association with MIT. And of course, you started one of your early companies, the Psychomo Networks, was also with the help of people from the academia, MIT, etc. So my next question to you is the clear role that academia or academics play in this your venture based on your experience.
Yeah. So, for example,
if you can give me
yeah,
one or two specific examples.
yeah. So, if let's say Sycamore, like the company that you mentioned, what was happening was that I had just built Cascade Communications, and we had just sold that company, which became a part of Lucent. And at that time, Cascade was carrying about 80% of the backbone traffic of the internet. But at the same time, whenever you got bandwidth from, let's say, Boston to California, you couldn't get the bandwidth from Boston to India. You could barely get a few kilobits. But if you got, let's say, a megabit from Boston to California, you had to pay $1 million a month. It was very expensive. And when bandwidth was very expensive, uh, all the companies, all of us, we were spending maybe $1 billion a year on research to figure out how to make best use of that limited resource. And so, you would put video packets ahead of the audio packets, ahead of the regular data that you want to transmit. Because, right now, and you are having this conversation on such a beautiful connection, this would not have been possible at that time. And you had to struggle really hard even to get a pretty messy, even just to be able to see each other, right? But then what happened was that when I met these MIT scientists, I realized that you don't have to struggle with this limited resource, because fiber optics was well proven at that time. So fiber optics is like a thin hair. And then laser beams were well developed. So what happens is, on one side of the fiber, you blink a laser beam, and that light, travels hundreds of kilometers, and then on the other side, you detect it, and if you blink on this side, you know how you are blinking on the other side, so you're communicating. And it's amazing that you can actually do that 10 billion times a second, right? And not only can you do one laser beam, because you can have lasers at different colors on the same fiber, you can put hundreds of these laser beams on the same fiber. So it's like going from kilobits to megabits to gigabits to terabits all very quickly. And so when a technology like that becomes possible, it allows you to disrupt an industry. And so, and this is happening more and more and more now because people are coming up with fantastic ideas. And so, whatever it is that was not possible becomes possible. And when something not possible becomes possible, it creates an opportunity for an entrepreneur to build a business.
So you have now transitioned along to, I mean, I could even say that, along with a change of pace in the whole world, being an entrepreneur to venture capital, right? So capitalist. So as a VC today, for example, there are so many different people have their own playbooks, right? What to support, whether it's the idea or so there's that famous saying between the jockey and the horse. So I would like to know, as a VC, what are your criteria for picking a particular winner, or you can say investing in a particular company?
Okay. So, by year 2000, after Cascade and Sycamore got built, I sort of transitioned to being, I said, I don't want to be the CEO, I don't want to be the entrepreneur, but I want to be more like a mentor investor. So I started doing other companies. And then I did it for about 10 years or so. And then actually, I'm now a social, mostly in the social sector. So I don't make a lot of investments myself, even though our office does. So I think whenever you invest, you're always investing in an A team and a B idea versus an A idea and a B team. Because whenever you start a company, whatever idea that you start with, it's very unlikely that it gets built exactly the way you thought it would be. And because you start with an idea, and then every day, as you interact with the world, with the customers, with the competition, with technology, things keep changing. And so it's a question of, do you have a team that can respond to those changes? First of all, they do need to have a vision that's big enough, that's worth doing all that effort. But then if the vision is big, then do they have the ability to navigate through that new information that comes your way as you go along? And so I think you always bet an A team, even if they have a B idea, rather than an A idea with a B team.
So that people or the team is more important to you. You can always mentor them also, right? If their idea isn't, if you think that their idea isn't that great, or anyway, they will also probably learn, right? The team,
they will find out, they'll take your help, but they're not dependent on you. They will use you, but that's not. You don't tell them what to do. If you tell them what to do, then it's a B team.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. So, of course, you pick, I mean, now you have transitioned from, as you mentioned yourself, from a VC to a social entrepreneur with your Deshpande Foundation. You're doing wonderful work here in Hubli in Karnataka. So my question to you is, how different is these two worlds, the mainstream entrepreneurial journey and then the social entrepreneur? What are the challenges that you have faced as a social entrepreneur?
So the common thing between both of them is this concept of looking at the world, which is A, and then thinking about B, which is better than A. But what's different is that, let's say there's 8 billion people in the world. About 3 billion of them have disposable income. 5 billion of them don't have disposable income. And the way you make a difference in their lives is a little different. When people have disposable income, you have to compete for the opportunity to make a difference in their lives because they have options, right? So you cannot go to them and say, hey, let me give you something. They will say, but why? So you have to bring something new to the world before they buy into it. And so innovation becomes very important. And when that innovation meets relevance, you have an impact. And that's the whole startup world and everything else. But when you go to the other 5 billion people who don't have disposable income, particularly if you go to the bottom of that 5 billion, they're just struggling to get through the day. So it's not like they're looking for the most innovative solution, patentable thing, hugely competitive advantage and everything else, but they're looking for the most relevant solution for that. So that equation actually gets turned around and it becomes relevance plus innovation is equal to impact. Meaning you have to understand them, you have to co-create the solution with them, but you do have to do something different because if you didn't do anything different, nothing will change. So innovation takes a back seat. But if you're lucky enough to find an innovation that makes a difference in their lives, then it gives you an opportunity to scale that solution. And as you scale the solution, you get an opportunity to put in more and more innovation in terms of technology, in terms of financial engineering, in terms of all the things that you do in the 3 billion people economy. And so in one case, you start with innovation. In the other one, you start with relevance. But if you do find solutions that actually make an impact on people's lives, then you get an opportunity to inject more and more innovation to make it bigger. So, so you need both if you want to have solutions that can actually have a big impact on the social sector, on the people who are at the bottom. You need people who are connected with them. You cannot be sitting in Boston and coming up with solutions for them. So we have a large staff in Hubli that is constantly in touch with these people. In fact, most of the people come from those communities so that they have a deep understanding of what the problems are. But at the same time, if we have to scale it, we have to bring some new practices to that whole sector, whether it's like your business of collecting data and coming up insights with it and troubleshooting the problems and all those things, bringing technology. For example, we do the program for farm ponds, where we dig a hole that's 100 feet by 100 feet by 12 feet in a private farm, and that collects rainwater and irrigates 5 acres of land, and that doubles and triples income. And we've done thousands of these. But now we also have a rural transformation technology center that tracks about 30 satellites. And given any piece of land, we can look at it and we can recreate the history of water for the last 12 years. So there is a way we can help these small farmers in villages using technology. Now, a lot of them it costs about 1 lakh to build these things. So some of them need financing. So we have to work with the bank to bring in some financial engineering, make sure that they do have that capital when they need it. So it gives in, and then something building thousands of these farms, you have to use logistics and you have to use supply chain and you have to use all the technology and the techniques that you use in the developed economy to the benefit of these people. So in some ways, you have to move away from what is generally known as an entrepreneurship, in which case you're looking for a breakthrough idea to actually becoming more relevant to the people that you're trying to help. But slowly it gives you an opportunity to get back to the other sector and bring in all the leading practices that are being developed in that sector to the benefit of the social sector.
So relevance becomes the main focus. Still innovation. In fact, Professor Vijay Govindarajan calls it as the reverse innovation.
Yeah.
That is, you are trying to innovate within the constraints that are there in a particular system. So it's still relevance and the community interests or the individual problems where the pain is, that is more important in a social sector. Thank you.
You have to start with relevance, and where most of the people fail, whether it's Silicon Valley or Bangalore and so on, they're all very motivated to solve the problems of the rural India. But most of them ask the question, what is it that I can help with that I'm good at? And what they're good at are coming up with new ideas, and so in isolation, they come up with, they all think that if they come up with this beautiful app on a phone, they can just solve all education problems. But unfortunately, it's not relevant, right? So I think you have to sort of almost make the what you know well take a back seat and really lead with what people really need. It's not that different than the customer um, connection when you build companies. You have to be connected with the customer all the time, because unless you do something that solves a problem for the customer, you're not going to be able to build a successful company. But when you build those companies, those customers are very much like you. Whereas in the social sector, the customer that you're trying to help are very different than yourself, the person who's trying to do it, because their risk tolerances are very different, their problems are very different, and they don't live like you. So I think not knowing those problems and just starting with innovation makes a lot of the effort useless.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Deshpande, my final question to you is, you are an Indian American, and then you have been an entrepreneur, you have been a VC, you are now a social impact leader. So what do you attribute all of this to, your lived experiences to your Indian roots, or your evolution within the North American, universities, government, and then the business or the entrepreneurial community?
Well, I think first of all, it's luck. You get exposed to good ideas, good opportunities, good people, and they all help you along the way. But in general, anytime people get dislocated, um, they do become more innovative because they can see something. We always hear about this out of box thinking.
Yeah.
Out of box thinking is very natural for anybody who gets dislocated. And growing up in India with a very good value system, with hard work and having a very safe childhood, makes you take a lot more risks, even though risk taking and business was not a part of our family. It just opened up opportunities. And America is an amazing place. I mean, it's amazing how embracing the country is about new ideas, new people, and create opportunities for people. So it's a combination of growing up in India and being in US that's allowed us to create a lot of opportunities in US. But I'm also very pleased that last 15, 20 years or so, we've also been able to take some of these learnings and bring about at least some change in India.
Thank you so much for this interview, your insight, your story. It's been really heartwarming as well as inspiring. I'm sure our audience are also going to be inspired by you and then learn from your experiences as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Dr. Deshpande. Hope to meet you somewhere. If you are in Mysore, coming this side of India or this side of Karnataka, I would say, let us be in touch, and then hope to meet you somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.